What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you for being here. I super appreciate you. Today, we have some interesting topics to talk about, including a template and demonstrations for exercises one can do at home for a full body workout with very minimal equipment. If you are new here, my name is Chris, aka Terrible Hime. I am a fitness enthusiast and sometimes fitness educator. I've been training for about 10 years and I'm currently focused on bodybuilding, but I'm also trying to get back some of my core strength and some strength on my compound lifts after having hernia surgery about a year ago. On this channel, I strive to provide an inclusive and welcoming environment for all people. Doesn't matter what your fitness goals are, what your fitness level is, or what your body composition is. I hope that that sounds good to you, and if it does, stick around. If you are watching the VOD, thank you so much. I super appreciate the support. It actually really does help. You can leave any comments, questions, or concerns in the comments below this video, and I will do my best to answer in the comments or in an upcoming live stream. And last but not least, if you are enjoying my content and you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you get notified next time I go live, and you can like or dislike the stream over here, and it helps me with my fight against the algorithm. In the description on this video, I already wrote out what I would call a template for like a full body at home workout, but it comes with some caveats, and I'm gonna tell you these caveats right at the beginning. This is, I would say, a very, very basic program to get somebody new to working out started. If they don't feel comfortable going to a gym, they don't want to go to a gym, they don't have any equipment or anything, that this is like the most simple workout I could come up with that hits basically your full body. It's simple, relatively easy, but it is a slightly longer workout because it's your whole body in one workout. If somebody were to do this workout, I would recommend that you do the workout and you take at least one rest day before you do it again, because it does work out your whole body. You want to give yourself adequate time to recover, right? So workout, day off, workout, day off, workout, day off, or if you need to take 2 days off, you can do that as well. I'm going to give you a bunch of different example exercises. So if you need to come back to this video and reference a bunch of these exercises, you know, you go ahead and do that. But I'm going to give you multiple exercises per muscle group. If you're doing this workout and you're doing basically the same workout multiple times a week, I would recommend when you're writing your program, or if you need help writing a program, you can like message me into Discord, or we can talk about it in Discord. I would recommend setting up multiple days that follow the same template, but have different exercises. Do you know what I'm saying? So like one day you do push-ups and another day you do a different chest exercise. So that's another caveat. You have to progressively overload to see progress. If you do the workout program and you never do anything more than you did the absolute first day, you're just gonna stay the same, okay? So progressive overload means that you have to gradually put more stress on your muscles. And that could be in the form of more weight or more reps or more time under tension. So you have to keep that in mind. You actually do have to push yourself, even though it is a relatively easy program that you can do with stuff around the house. Okay, depending on the person, this program is only going to last you for like the first 1 to 6 months of your fitness journey. After that, you're probably going to need to progress to a different program, or you're going to have to progress to different implements. You know, you could maybe even do like the same program, but go to a gym and use heavier weights or something like that. But just doing this at home if you want to see a big difference in your physique, you're gonna have to do something more than just lifting books and cans, unless they're just like really, really heavy cans. If you're willing to go above and beyond, this program might last you a little bit longer, but this is truly like a very, very beginner program. And I don't think that I would look the way I look right now if I had done a program like this for my entire fitness career, if that makes sense. Really good form is absolutely vital, not only to make gains, but also to prevent injury. If you ever have any questions about form, like, please ask. It is so important that you are doing these exercises in a way that's not hurting you and that you're not building bad habits. Another thing that is gonna help you see gains is your diet. I'm not gonna tell you you need to do an entire diet overhaul, but prioritizing your protein and at least being in a calorie maintenance or surplus will help you build muscle. Most beginners are probably gonna build muscle anyways, just for like the first 3 to 6 months to a year, because they're just stimulating their body in a way they haven't before. But beyond that, you're gonna hit a hard plateau, which is what happened to me when I first started working out. For a year, I was like newbie gains out the ass, and then all of a sudden, bam, I hit a big plateau. But like I said, I'm not telling you to completely overhaul your diet, but think about ways that you can add more protein to your diet. You might think about adding maybe a protein shake, one protein shake throughout the day on top of what you're already eating. That's like 20 to 25 grams of protein. If you have a double protein shake, that's like fucking 50 grams of protein added to whatever you were eating before. You know, when you're making a plate of food, maybe consider having a bigger portion of protein. You don't necessarily have to make a smaller portion of other stuff, but adding a bigger portion. If you eat dairy, check and see what has high protein. You know, if you eat yogurt, look for a higher protein yogurt, cheese and stuff like that. Some stuff has more protein than others. Like Greek yogurt compared to like other types of yogurt usually has a lot more protein. Cottage cheese also has protein. Yeah, I don't necessarily advocate for completely overhauling your entire life to start a fitness journey, but it's something to keep in mind. Yeah, getting enough protein can definitely be a challenge. And, you know, to go from like not really caring about what you eat to like kind of what I do, like tracking and really like going above and beyond in protein can be really overwhelming. So that's why I'm saying like try to add in here and there where you can. Try to prioritize. Okay, and the last thing I want to say when it comes to caveats is that you should be tracking your progress in some way, right? I personally like to have my spreadsheets where I have my workout program and I write down my weights and my reps and everything every week. You don't necessarily have to do that. Maybe you want to keep a little notebook. Maybe you want to take progress pictures. Maybe you want to take body measurements, stuff like that. Have some measure of progress tracking. Okay, so now we went over all of those caveats. Now I'm going to talk about the workout setup. Like I said, it's listed in the description below if you need to reference it. It's going to basically be 8 or 9 exercises. It's going to go chest, shoulders, and triceps. I would recommend doing a superset to save time. Back, rear delts, and biceps as a superset to save time. Quads and hamstrings. And optionally, you can do a glute exercise if you want. And the equipment that I'm going to be using today, I have a backpack full of bullshit. I have one huge pharmacy book. And I have a reusable grocery bag full of cans and diet juice. So this is what we're going to work with today. Okay, optionally, if you have, let's see, if you have a bench of some sort, like a hard bench, it doesn't necessarily have to be a workout bench, but like a sturdy bench. And honestly, if you want to purchase a set of resistance bands, that would really help with like pulling exercises. But I did my best to find some that don't require resistance bands. And I'm talking resistance bands that like the tube resistant bands that look like this that you attach a handle to. So yeah, if you were looking to get something for home that would be really helpful, this would be helpful. But like I said, I tried to come up with some stuff that you don't need. Okay, also I wanna mention when it comes to like a backpack to put shit in, make sure you get one that's sturdy, and if you have one that has like straps to hold it down. So I just wanna make sure you have it like really sturdy, you know, pull it really tight, don't let it hang down. And if you have the chest strap is really helpful. And we're gonna use this for like a lot of exercises, okay? So you better make sure you got a sturdy ass backpack, okay? You load it up with whatever you need to. So we're gonna start with chest exercises. We all know push-ups are a really good chest exercise, but if push-ups are too easy for you, use the backpack to add more weight to it, okay? So things to keep in mind when you're doing push-ups, you don't want to have your arms way out here. This is putting your shoulder in a really compromised position. Try to have them somewhere in between, like kind of like a 45-degree angle. Put your hands so that your wrist stacks over your elbow. So you don't want to have them here, you want to have them like out to here. And then make sure you're keeping your core really tight and you have a neutral back. I'm not saying that you have to force it to be straight, you know, maybe you got an ass, okay, and then it makes your back look really curvy. But have a neutral back, tighten your core like someone's about to punch you. And when you do your push-ups, you can, you know, if you need to start out on your knees, you can do them on your knees. It makes them a little bit easier, but the same thing, make sure you tighten your core. And go all the way down and all the way up. Okay, knee push-ups, footy push-ups, all the way down, all the way up. If you don't like to get all the way on the floor, you can also do them off of a bench. Make sure it's sturdy. This will make it a little bit easier, right? Tighten your core. All the way down, all the way up. Also helps you tighten your core if you squeeze your booty cheeks a little bit, okay? So that's my first chest exercise. Push-ups, always a classic. But I have another one for you. You get a heavy object. It can be whatever the fuck, okay? I just happen to have this really heavy book upstairs. But use what you have in your home, and you're gonna do a prayer press, is what it's called. So this works your chest in two ways actually, because you're not only stretching it and pushing, but you're also squeezing at the same time. You're gonna hold your object in between your hands as hard as you can, and then you're gonna press it like this. This is actually not heavy enough. I would say this is probably easier than push-ups. So if you're a very beginner, start out with this and then work your way up to push-ups. But you want to squeeze it, bring it down to below your chest. Don't bring it up here because we don't want to put our shoulders in a compromised position. You want to touch underneath your pecs or underneath your boobs and then press up. Keep it slow and controlled on the way down, and then you can explode up if you want. And I would recommend finding something that's a little on the slimmer side so that you have more room to squeeze it together. those are the 2 chest exercises I got for you. Kind of doubles as a hand exercise. Well, the thing is, you're not squeezing with your fingers so much. So if your wrist and your elbow are tracking pretty well, it's more about the pressure from here and less from your fingers. But I mean, there's nothing stopping you from doing it like this if you want. I just don't think that that should be your focus, if that makes sense. So it's more about this. I will say, if you have trouble with your wrists, putting him this kind of position, because Joey can't really bend his wrists all the way back like that. You can do stuff on your fingers, just be really careful. So like you can do push-ups on your fingers, and you can do this kind of an exercise with your fingers, just be really careful. And I would recommend that more than doing it on your fist. If you don't want to do it like this, I recommend fingers more than fists. If you're somebody that's going to the gym, these are still really good exercises. You know, use a bench and use either plates or dumbbells, and you can do a prayer press. It's really hard, actually, if you're using heavy weights. And I actually I saw this on Renaissance Periodization, doing some deficit push-ups as a burnout for your chest, where you elevate your hands, and when you do your push-up, you get as low as you possibly can to really stretch out your chest. And it's actually like really good. It feels really good, especially if you typically bench and you're not feeling so much of a stretch across the chest. Moving on, I'm gonna talk about, I would say maybe like three shoulder exercises that are going to work both your front shoulder and your rear shoulder. They're all kind of like compound exercises to hit both. Because this is a full body workout, I want you to like save as much time as possible. So to do that, I've kind of not come up with these exercises, but I've compiled these exercises so that it goes a little bit faster. So this is where you would get some kind of household item that's heavy enough for you to use. I have cans right here. You know, you could use books, you could use jugs of water, you could use, trying to think what other things people have around the house. You know, if you have like a bag, if you have bags, you need more weight, you fill up those bags. I've got 3 kind of variations for you, right? So the first one is, I don't even know what you would call this. I would say this is like a 90-90 shoulder exercise. You're basically going to do one arm doing a front raise while the other arm does a lateral raise. And then you're just going to switch back and forth. And it's relatively simple, I would say. One thing to keep in mind is that you want to try to keep your torso centered to the front. You don't want to turn your body because then your arms are in the same position. But having your arms in these 2 different positions mean that 2 different muscles are working. Another thing is that you want to try to lead with your elbow, okay? You don't want to lead with your hand like this. It takes some of the tension off the muscle, especially for the lateral raises. So try to think about like internally rotating your arms a little bit so that you're leading slightly with your elbow. Your pinky side of your hand is also going to turn up a little bit. So you're just going to bring them up. One up and one out to the side, and then switch. And you just want to make sure that you're doing both sides for the same amount of reps. See, look, I'm already turning my body a little bit. And for the one going to the front, you can try to like squeeze it just a little bit to the inside, and it will get a little bit of your upper chest. When you're doing your side lateral raise, try not to like bring it way up high. That also starts to take some of the tension off the muscle you're trying to work. starts using some of your traps, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's like not really the focus of this exercise. So this is one variation. It might be a little bit difficult if you are not super coordinated. It's going to take a bit of proprioception. Make sure that you're just taking it really slow and focusing on the form. This is something you might want to do in a mirror if you are able. So that was the first shoulder exercise. And like I said, it works your front and your lateral shoulders, which is good. You got a 2 for 1. The second one, come up and then bring it down and then come up in the front and then out to the side. So it's the same thing, but you're not crisscrossing. You're not switching back and forth. You're doing both arms doing the same thing at the same time. This might be better if you are, I guess they're exactly the same thing, but this is probably easier. And I will say that these muscles are very tiny. You're probably not gonna lead a whole bunch of weight. Honestly, just me doing these is kind of like putting a decent amount of tension just with these cans. I definitely could probably do like a lot, but I am feeling it. So don't think that just because you're using household items doesn't mean you're gonna get a good workout. This is my last shoulder exercise. I call these around the worlds. I would say this one works a little bit less of your lateral delts, but it does hit them a tiny bit. You could even, like if you go like this with your hands on top of the can, you'll hit it a little better. It's just more of an exaggerated like lateral raise. This is not my favorite, but it might be the easiest in terms of like somebody that's new to working out. And when I'm doing the exercise, if you look from the side, I'm not bringing them straight up. I'm kind of like bringing it out in front of me just a little bit to keep tension on that front delt. And as always with all these exercises, as you're doing them, keep your core tight. You know, just think about somebody punching you and tense your core. If you want to like squeeze your glutes a little bit to help with that, I don't hate it. Just be careful you don't cramp up your ass. But yeah, and from the side, this is what the other exercises look like. I'm not actually having my arms straight out to my sides when I do them. I do have them kind of forward just a little bit. And then this one. This one takes the most control, like body control. Okay? So those would be your shoulder exercises. So I have the first exercise, which is chest, as 3 sets because it's a bigger muscle. It's kind of like the exercise is a little bit more compound exercises, more full body. But the shoulders, I only have it down for 2 sets, and you're gonna superset it with your triceps, which is also 2 sets, okay? These are smaller muscle groups. You don't need to like, as a beginner, you don't need to worry about isolating these are like really tiny muscle groups as much as like, I think you should focus on like bigger compound movements that are gonna kind of work more than one thing. Okay, tricep exercises. The classic OG tricep exercise for working out at home is diamond push-ups. Basically, it's a push-up. It's like a close grip bench press. It emphasizes, although it does still work your chest, it emphasizes your triceps a little bit more. Basically, you're gonna do a push-up, but you're gonna have your hands basically touching, and you're going to push up to right underneath your chest. It's gonna look like this. You see how my tricep is like really working, even not doing it with any weight or anything. And this is also something that you can do on your knees if you are finding it difficult to do them from your feet. This one is more difficult than a regular push-up, so don't feel some type of, I mean, you shouldn't feel some type of way anyways, but it's more difficult because you're using more of your arms. So it's harder. It's harder than a regular push-up. So like I said, you want to put your, oh, the reason it's called a diamond is because most people put their hands like this. You want to put it down and you're going to push up so that the lower part of your chest touches the diamond. Ooh. Yeah, that's pretty difficult for me. Ugh, on my footies. So I would say the diamond push-ups is a little bit more of an advanced exercise. Not everybody's going to be able to do that like right off the bat if you're a complete beginner. And also keep in mind you can do it on a bench if you need to make it even easier for yourself. But again, you can use the cans or you can use some other kind of household item and do tricep exercises with those. So the main movement of the tricep is your elbow extension. So my recommendations would either be to do an overhead tricep extension or a tricep kickback. Like this. I think the overhead is going to be a little bit more effective because of gravity pushing down on you. And it also puts your tricep in a more stretched out position. So basically what you're gonna do is you have your cans and you bring your elbows up and extend up like this. Your form is gonna really depend on the length of your arms, I'll be honest. So when I do them, you can see that the can goes like well below my head, and that's what helps me get the stretch that I need. And like if you can kind of see, my hands are slightly rotating. Also, the length and size of the object, that's true. Don't hit yourself. But that being said, this might be an uncomfortable exercise for some people, depending on your shoulder and your elbows. So if you're having trouble with this, man, that actually is really, it's like doing some shit to me. I would say you can do your kickback, which would be like bending over, core tight, glutes engaged, and you're basically just gonna kick it back like this. So you're really, the unfortunate thing about this kind of exercise is you're really only putting tension on the muscle from like here to here. Otherwise, like this is bicep and this is just hanging. So that's why I would prefer if you did the overhead extension. But if you don't feel like you're up for that, you can do this instead. And you'll still get a good squeeze. You just won't get as much stretch. Don't want to see anyone doing around the world raised with a cast iron skillet. Yeah, everybody please, 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 please be really, really, really careful. Don't break anything. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't use objects that are hard to hold on to. Don't use stuff that's like really oddly shaped. Use your brain and your common sense. So those are my 2 tricep recommendations. Pretty simple. Yeah, so if you're doing this workout, if you're doing this full body workout, I would recommend that you superset your shoulder and tricep exercises, right? Because you have 2 of each. You would go shoulders, triceps, shoulders, triceps, okay? And you're not gonna need a ton of break in between the exercises because your shoulders and triceps are not the same muscle. You might need a little bit, but not a ton of time. So if you don't know what a superset is, it's basically a way of training where you do 2 different exercises consecutively, and you count that as the set. That as one single set. So you do one set of one exercise and another set of another exercise, right, one after the other, and that would be counting as one set. And what it does, it helps you get through your workout a little bit more quickly because it reduces the amount of break in between your sets. So basically you're gonna do your 3 chest exercise: chest break, chest break, chest break, shoulder tricep break, shoulder tricep break. And that's gonna be all your pushing stuff, right? And then we move on to the back things. The back things are pulling exercises are much more difficult to do at home. It's hard to do them kind of from a standing position. If possible, this is where the resistance bands or having a pull-up bar would really come in handy. But obviously, the whole point is that we don't have those things. So I'm gonna tell you some other stuff that you can do. I would say you can start out with like a thing, or you can grab a bag full of shit and do this. But I have a couple different versions of rows. So one is basically going to be, you can do it just like kind of leaning over, but you could also stabilize yourself on a bench or something. Basically, you're gonna lean over, let your arm hang, and then row it up to your hip. You see what I'm doing? Core tight, glutes engaged, and you're bringing it up. So when I'm doing this, I'm trying to keep my elbow kind of tucked. When you bring it out like this, it's kind of engaging a different muscle, but we're kind of working the lats here. So if you see me from the front, this is what it looks like. What you do not want to do is like try to cross it across your body. You just want to bring it straight up, straight back. Okay. So that's gonna work kind of like, gonna work up here, it's gonna work out here, it's gonna work your lats in general. Also, my arm is itchy. So that would be like a single arm row for your back. You know, if you have 2 of the same thing, you can do them both at the same time. Just be careful that you're not like swinging up. You wanna have your back and your core stable, unmoving throughout the entire exercise. Yeah, if you had like a duffel bag or like a backpack, you could kind of, I think this has a handle somewhere. You could kind of like go like this, but it might limit your range of motion. And then I realized that the juice is right there, so you can't really see what I'm doing, but you know what I mean. So that's one option, and it's a pretty good back exercise, but your back is a large group of muscles, and I would really love it if you could do a vertical pulling exercise, but those are more difficult to do without more equipment. Anyways, okay, so rows, you can do it one arm at a time, you can do both arms at a time. That's a really good exercise. If you have access to like a relatively sturdy bench, or I feel like you could do this on the floor, I guess. You can do pullovers. So this is for your lats. Basically, you're gonna do that. You're gonna lay on the floor or lay on your bench, and you're gonna hold the weight in your hands over your head, and you're gonna bring it over. The thing is that you don't need to bring it past like, not even 90. If this is 90, you don't need to bring it past here, because then it takes tension away from your back. So it's basically just from like here to here. Really let your lats stretch out on the way back. So I'm gonna use this fat pharmacy book again. You're on the floor. Have your back in a neutral position. If your lower back doesn't touch the floor, that's totally okay. You don't have to force it. I kind of like to have my feet up a little bit. I feel a little bit more stable like that. And you're gonna hold the thing in both hands, or if you have two things, you can do them separately, have your hands separate, and bring it over your head. It can touch the floor, just don't let it rest on the floor. And then when you bring it up to about here, and then let it down slowly. Really important to let it down slowly. Let it pull on you. Get that time under tension, feel the stretch. This one's gonna be really good on the lats. I would tell you, be careful of your elbows. You don't have to lock them out. I personally always like to have a soft bend in my elbows because it feels safer for me and my shitty elbows. So I kind of like keep them soft rather than like forcing them to lock out. Yeah, so like I said, when you bring it all the way up to 90 degrees, you have no kind of tension on your back anymore. So that's why I say try to keep it like slightly over your head. And you'll really feel it on the way down this way. Yeah, so I really like this exercise for the back. I mean, I do it on the cable machine where I kind of like go like this and pull it this way. But this is a good alternative. And a lot of people do it at the gym on a bench with dumbbells. So this is another one of those exercises that you could do at the gym, just, you know, with gym implements. The only other thing I had is, this is kind of similar to what I just showed you. And it's also kind of similar to the row, but it's, I don't know what this would be called, but this is not my favorite back exercise, or it's not my favorite recommendation for back because it works the muscle in a very shortened range of motion. And I would really prefer for people to get as much stretch as possible. But basically you would get into the same position as if you were doing the row. And instead of bringing your elbow up like this, you just bring your arm back straight. It is gonna work some of your tricep because it's putting tension on the tricep just to hold it up, but you wanna try to squeeze your lat as you do it. Another reason I don't super love this, especially for beginners, is it's really difficult a lot of times for people that are starting out to really engage with their back muscles because it's not really something a lot of us are using in our day-to-day life, and is also something that's not as visually easy to see, even in a mirror. So yeah, just in general, it can be really difficult to engage those muscles. But if you're having trouble with everything else, you can give this one a try. And it's just like keeping your arm straight and squeezing it backwards like that. You want to try to pinch your upper arm to your back, to your side when you're doing it. This is more of a kind of more of an isometric exercise, which is definitely doing some work, just not as much. Anyways, so those are my back exercises. If you're looking at the template for the program, you would do 3 sets of those. And I gave everything a very wide range of reps because, you know, the amount of reps you do is really going to depend on your fitness level and what kind of implements you have that you can use in your house. But if you start to feel like something is getting easy, like you can easily do 15 reps, that's when you need to figure out how to make the exercise more difficult, either with more weights, more time under tension, greater range of motion, stuff like that. So those were my back exercises. Like I said, the back stuff is always a little bit difficult. I really recommend, like, if I understand, you know, you're working out at home, maybe you don't have a big budget for exercise equipment, but if you plan to stay working at home for like an extended period of time, investing in resistance bands is a really good idea. A lot of these exercises you can use resistance bands for or make alternatives. That might be the first purchase you want to make after you've like decided that this is the thing that I'm going to do. Next up, we have rear delt exercises. So I mentioned that your shoulder is the front, the lateral, and the rear. So I think that getting some isolated rear delt exercises is a really good idea. It's something that's really gonna help a lot of us like sit up straighter. Most of us have problems with our posture. I mean, I know I do. When I sit at work, I literally sit like this all day, and I should be better about like chest up, shoulders back. But your rear delt is really gonna help with that. You can see me flexing it right here. It's that muscle right there. Rear delts are gonna help you open up your chest a little bit more. We wanna try to stay as balanced as possible. So if you're doing stuff for your chest, you wanna try to do an equal amount of stuff for your back as well. So here are my rear delt exercises. This is another exercise that's gonna take a lot of proprioception, and you might not get it right the first time. You might not feel it in your rear delts when you first start out, but this would be something I would say, if you're having trouble, like take a video, put it in the Discord, and I can do my best to help you. I'm gonna give you as many tips as I can. So this is the absolute beginner rear delt exercise. It's basically a Superman, but you're gonna have your arms out. Probably shouldn't be doing these just on like the bare floor, but this basically requires no equipment. You're gonna lay down, arms out, and then you're basically gonna engage your back and bring your arms up, squeezing. That's the important part. And do reps like this. You honestly don't necessarily need to like squeeze your glutes and come up off the floor, but it's also not a bad idea to do that if you're doing this exercise anyways, so you can work your lower back a little bit. So basically come up, and the range of motion is very short because this is more of an isometric squeezing exercise. Right here. It might help for you to slightly turn your hand so that your pinky is facing up, and then when you squeeze it, you can kind of play with it and see if you're feeling it a little bit more one way or the other. I think this is a really good exercise for learning how to engage this muscle, because like I said, it can be difficult for a lot of people to engage their back when they haven't really focused on it before. One thing you want to keep in mind is that you don't necessarily want to squeeze your shoulder blades together. It's more about, I was going to say more about engaging your rear delts, but if you don't know how to engage your rear delts, that doesn't really make any sense. So you're not doing this. You're just bringing it up until you can feel your rear delts. Yeah, I think if you're an absolute beginner and you've never really done much for your back before, I think that's actually a really good way to try to learn how to engage those muscles. So would highly recommend that actually. The other things that you can do, they involve the cans. You either have to be seated or you can bend over, which I don't hate it if you bend over because it's gonna make you engage your core more, but you know, it could end up being taxing on your lower back if you're doing all of these exercises like bent over. But you could either do a rear delt fly, which is basically arms more on the straight side, kind of going straight out, not straight out, but going out to the sides like that. or a rear delt row, I would say put the back of your hand up, and then you would row like this, whichever feels more comfortable. I don't necessarily, I can tell the difference. It's kind of just like whatever you feel better. But that's it. Same difference. And if you're doing them seated, you would just lean over. Or like that. Again, the same thing. You don't have to squeeze your shoulder blades together when you're doing it. You don't need to do this. You only need to go to where you feel your rear delt working, which for most people is going to be almost just like straight out from your body, perpendicular to your body. So that would be 2 sets for the rear delts. Because it's such a small muscle group, I don't want you spending a whole bunch of time on that, but it is really important, especially for us gamers with bad posture. And you're gonna superset that with biceps. I don't know that I necessarily need to go too into detail when it comes to bicep exercises. You can really just do like a basic curl like that, or a hammer curl if that's a little bit more comfortable for you. What I wanna caution you against is don't shorten your range of motions. Okay, I don't wanna see nobody doing like this. You wanna stretch it all the way down, all the way up. Bonus points if when you bring it up, you turn your wrist out at the same time. So you can see the difference when I just bring my arm up like this. And then when I turn it, do you see the way my bicep contracts just a little bit extra? So that's really good. You want to try to keep your upper arms close to your sides. They don't need to come out like that for no reason. A good rule of thumb is that when you bring it down, when you feel your tricep flex, when you feel the back of your arm flex, that's when you would initiate the curl again. So there's some other variations of this that you could do, but this is basically, this is curls at its most simple. Some variations that you might want to try out though is like a concentration curl. If you have something to sit on, you can brace your elbow against your knee. Make sure your knee is not on your elbow. It needs to be above your elbow. And you can curl like this. This is gonna make you not swing the weight. That's a good one. Yeah, that's about it. That's about it for biceps. So you would superset your rear delts and your biceps. So it's gonna go rear delt, bicep, then rest, rear delt, bicep, then rest, and just 2 sets of each. Next, we're gonna move on to the leg stuff. These, we're gonna use the backpack a lot. It's just gonna be really helpful to have it on your back to do a lot of these things. You got 2 major muscles, well, I guess 3, in your leggies. You have the quadriceps on the front, your hamstrings on the back of your leg, and your glutes. I'm gonna be real, I did not put any calves or abs in this program. If you wanna do calves and abs, like that's on you, but I was trying to keep it relatively concise. These are honestly gonna be very basic exercises we all have probably heard about. You know, without the option of doing exercises on the machines at a commercial gym, you're gonna be stuck doing a lot of like squats and lunges and stuff like that. But I'm gonna tell you some stuff to keep in mind. So when you are doing body weight squats, you want to be careful that you are not hinging at the hips too much. We're trying to emphasize the legs. We're not trying to emphasize hip hinging movements. So try to keep your torso as upright as possible and force your butt to go down, okay? So gonna come out down like this. I see a lot of people do squats and they go like this. We wanna force our torso to stay as straight as possible. So my recommendation when it comes to finding your form, just kind of like go back and forth and see where your feet kind of just naturally go. And that's generally a good rule of thumb. We don't really need to go super wide or super narrow for these, although you can if that's what feels comfortable for you. They emphasize the muscles a little bit differently, but I don't think you need to worry about that as a beginner. When you're squatting down, you want your knees to track over top of your feet. Please be really careful that your knees are not caving in or going out so far that it's causing your foot to turn. For me personally, I find it comfortable to have my feet kind of angled out just a little bit, but they are flat on the floor. And when I squat, my knees go straight over top of the top of my feet. Figure out where your feet feel comfortable, and then you can hold on to the backpack straps, or you can just kind of like keep your hands out of the way. And when you come down, like I said, knees over your feet, and try not to lean forward too far. Only enough to balance yourself. Yeah, I would love it if you could work in your best range of motion. I know that not everybody is going to be able to squat super low, but if you can at least get your thighs parallel to the ground, that'd be really good. If you're having trouble with that, you can put something under your heels to elevate your heel a little bit, and it's gonna help you with ankle mobility if you have less mobile ankles. So like you could put some books or something under your feet like that, and you might have an easier time getting down. But yeah, this is just really a basic squat. Like that. As straight up and down as you possibly can go. Another thing that you can do is have the backpack on the front of your body. It might force you to squat a little bit more upright. So this would be kind of akin to a goblet squat, like if you're holding the weight in front of you, but same thing. Straight up and down as much as possible. Like I said, the biggest thing I see people do is that they squat and they lean way forward. And it's not the worst thing in the world, but it might put strain on your lower back, and it's emphasizing more of your glutes than it is your quads. We're gonna do a separate exercise for glutes. Another thing that you could do if you have something that you can sit on to make yourself go to a certain depth is to do a box squat, where you're basically gonna sit down and touch something before coming back up. The only thing about that is I would caution you against fully sitting down. I would tell you just use it to like tap your butt and then come right back up. If you're gonna do that, I would love it if you could, over time, use something shorter and shorter. The next thing I have for you, for your quads, is gonna be lunge variations. I really would love it if you could do more than just squatting, because it is a bilateral movement, meaning you're using both sides at the same time. If you have muscle imbalances and you are constantly doing bilateral movements, one side is naturally going to keep getting stronger and stronger, and it can lead to a lot even worse imbalances. So you might not always be able to tell that you're pushing harder on one side, but even if your limbs are just slightly different size, it can lead to stuff that's not great over time. So lunge variations are gonna take more proprioception than something where you're using both legs, like a squat. And I would tell you that if you need to use something to assist yourself, like, please just do that. Don't feel some type of way. It is good to work on your balance over time, but you can't just like expect yourself to be perfectly balanced right off. So like you can get a stick, or you can put your hand on a wall, or you can use a bench or something just to like steady yourself. I personally prefer reverse lunges, meaning you're stepping back into the lunge, because I think it's easier to control and less impact on your joints Whereas a forward lunge, you just kind of like fall into it. So stand with your feet, I would say probably about shoulder width apart. And you're going to, if you need to steady yourself, you're going to step backwards and come down. Touch your knee to the floor gently and then bring your foot back. But yeah, so starting out, if you're very new to working out, I would tell you go left, right, or right, left, because it gives your legs just a tiny bit of recovery in between. But if you need to make the exercise more difficult for yourself, you're a little bit more advanced, you've been working out for a little bit and you're having a hard time reaching the same intensity, do the same leg over and over until you reach the max reps and then switch. So like I said, you're gonna step back and then come down, slowly, controlled, touch your knee and then come back up. You can switch. When you're doing your lunges and basically all leg exercises, you can do them in a way that biases your quads or biases your glutes and hamstring, meaning one side is emphasized more than the other. If you want to emphasize your quads, which is how I'm trying to teach you, you want to focus on keeping your body upright, your torso as upright as possible. And when you step back, you want to have a 90-degree angle here and a 90-degree angle here. You are going to feel it in your quad or your hamstring a little bit, but this is going to emphasize, you're going to feel it in your hamstring a little bit. This is going to emphasize your quad more. So step back gently, come down, and try to pop right back up. Don't just sit on the floor. If you wanted to do this to emphasize your glutes, you would step much farther back and try to stretch your glute by having your torso at a more angled degree. And then you would step forward almost. But like I said, for quads, up and down, take a shorter step. If you didn't want to use a backpack, you could also hold something in your hand or just do them body weight to start out with. If you're holding something in your hand, you can do one hand or both hands at the same time. I would say hold it on the outside. So if you're doing it like this way, stepping back this way, hold it out here, hold it out here. And same on the other side, hold it out here to emphasize that side more. So those are lunges. Great exercise for doing things single leg. A split squat is really similar, or a similar movement, but you're elevating your rear foot. I would say this is, it's kind of a meme, but this is one of the best exercises for your legs. It's really brutal. You have to have something that you can put your foot on. I personally like to point my foot and have the top of my foot flat against the thing. And then you're gonna step out not too much and then come down. You almost sit back into it a little bit before you come out. You're gonna feel a stretch in the quad on your other foot, on your other leg. But this is again to emphasize your quads. You want to keep your torso upright and you don't want to have a big gap in between your two legs. You want to try to get that 90-degree here. I don't really love doing this on a bench because I find it really uncomfortable for my foot, but you might not have an issue. The stretch in the back leg feels really good. And then last but not least, when it comes to quad exercises, I've been talking about this a lot, and it is the DO squat, AKA standing sissy squats. I just don't really love that name. These are really, really difficult. I think that most beginners would have a very difficult time doing these and seeing the benefit, because I think a lot of people will do them in a way that makes it easier and de-emphasize the work in the quads. So basically, your feet are wherever you feel comfortable, as with the regular squats. And this one's so difficult. You really have to keep your core super tight and straight, or super tight and neutral. Squeeze your butts, and when you come down, the stretch you feel in your quads is gonna be really intense. And then, see, it's so hard. I did quads yesterday. You come up trying to use as much of your leg as possible. I don't think this is a beginner-friendly exercise, but it is a really good exercise for your quads. With the one with the foot on the bench, yeah, I can do it from a different side. I like to put my foot like flat, like this. Don't step out too far to emphasize your quads. You're gonna have to kind of play around with the form. And then when you go down, tight, engaged, go down as straight up and down as you can. This is where you're gonna feel the stretch. This leg is gonna feel really stretched, and then come back up. See, I get a cramp in my foot. You can also put your foot like this if that's a little better, but if your bench is kind of high, it's gonna be more difficult. So straight down, straight up. Even for me, doing this without weight, I am really feeling it. This is a really good exercise for your legs, but this one is definitely on the more difficult side, for sure. I think also the balance is a lot harder than like a lunge. So see, I didn't do that one good. I want to try to keep your torso perpendicular to the ground as possible. Use something to help you if you need it. Just try to use it for balance and not to like push down on. To start out with, like if we're talking about like a progression, first starting out, do the regular squat with something on your back or holding it in the front, right? Work that up until you feel really comfortable with it, and then go into the reverse lunge. Same thing, weight on the front or the back, and then really slow and controlled. You don't want to smash your knee, okay? And then move on to the split squats. I have a couple exercises that specifically emphasize your hamstrings and glutes. My number one recommendation, if you have a backpack, you got a good backpack, right? Straps on real nice, real tight, is gonna be good mornings. So this is gonna emphasize your hamstrings and your glutes. And you can do it in a way that really stretches out your hamstring, and then you can isometrically squeeze your glutes at the top. So you got the weight on your back. You're gonna find a comfortable positions for your footies. I would probably recommend about shoulder width apart. This is a hip hinging movement, and I find that a lot of people struggle with the hip hinge because it's kind of I don't want to say it's unnatural, but a lot of us, like when we bend down to do something, we're not focused on like what we're doing, right? We're just kind of like reaching, we're just kind of doing something. But this, I'm telling you, this is what's gonna get your glutes and your hamstrings nice and juicy. Yeah, exactly. It's not very intuitive. So the only bending that you're gonna be doing in this exercise is right here at your hips. You wanna think about pushing your hips back so that you're staying balanced, right? So if you're leaning, if you're bending, if you lean over too far forward, you're gonna fall over. So you have to put your hips back as you lean down, as you bend. And this is also gonna put a lot of stretch on your hamstrings. Keep your knees kind of soft. They don't have to be completely locked out. You're probably gonna not be flexible enough to really do this exercise if you have them really straightened. So have a nice little bend. Keep your core tight, like somebody's gonna punch you, and keep your spine neutral. That means you don't wanna go like this, you don't wanna do like this, whatever your back naturally does, that's where you want it to be. So engage your core, push your hips back, and bend at the hips until you feel a nice good stretch. And then you come up and you give a little squeeze to the glutes. Okay? Bend over, push your hips back, you come up, squeeze the glutes. Everyone's range of motion is gonna look a little bit different. Even though I am on the more flexible side, when I really like emphasize the stretch in the hammies, like this is as far as I get, you know? And pushing your hips back is gonna mean that you're probably not gonna bend over all the way. So the most important thing, keep a neutral spine and push the hips back, only bending at the hips, right there at the hips. And then when you come back up, you give a little squeeze just for the glutes, but you don't need to emphasize the squeeze so much that you're putting your back out of alignment. So it's just gonna look like this. This really is a nice exercise to use with a backpack, but you can also do it holding something down here. Like if you want to use a bag or you want to use your bottles, you can just hold it like that out in front of you. The only thing I would say when it comes to that is don't let it pull you forward so much that you're putting a lot of pressure on your lower back. You don't have to push yourself super hard, right? So like right where you feel it, maybe you push yourself just a little bit past so that you get a good stretch and then come up. You don't have to force yourself into a position that's gonna be really, 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 really painful, okay? But this is like my #1 exercise at home for like your glutes and your hamstrings. It really works both of them. Like I said, you can really feel that stretch. This, I would say, especially if you're a new beginner, start out with this exercise. And then if you find that it's getting a little bit too easy for you, or you wanna switch it up a little bit, you can do a similar exercise, but basically emphasizing one leg at a time. So instead of standing with your legs like this, you're gonna put one leg slightly behind you. And I would tell you, just try to put as little weight on that foot as possible. Like even if you can just like kind of have your foot like this or like this, don't put it flat on the floor, just as little weight as possible. This exercise is gonna take more balance than doing it both legs at the same time, but it's really good, like I said, when you're doing everything bilaterally, both legs at the same time, it can really emphasize muscle imbalances. And doing unilateral exercises, one side at a time, will help balance you out as long as you're doing the same weight for the same amount of reps, trying to do both sides exactly the same. So this is where you're gonna grab a thing, either just in your hand, or maybe you have a bunch of things in a bag or something like that. And you're gonna keep all the same cues in mind. Tight core, neutral back, engage the glutes. I think this is slightly easier in the sense that what you can do when you break at the hip is to think about not only pushing your hips backwards, but letting whatever implement you're holding kind of drag down your leg. Go until you feel the stretch and then come back up. Sometimes I like to put my other hand on my back to like make sure that it's staying neutral. Go down and then come back up. Only bending at the hip, putting as little weight on the back foot as possible. Hips back, dragging the implement up and down your leg. It's gonna take a little getting used to, probably gonna be a little bit shaky. And then, of course, you wanna do the same thing on the other side. So I'll show you from the front. Start out with your feet together and then put one slightly behind you, as little weight as possible. I kind of hold the thing out in front of me so I can really drag it up and down, engage the core, engage the glutes, push it back till you feel the stretch, and then come back up. Like I was saying about the two-legged RDLs, go until you feel the stretch. Maybe you want to push yourself a little bit to get a slightly more stretch, work on your mobility, but you don't have to push yourself to the point where you're injuring yourself, where you're pulling the muscle so far that it tears. B-stance RDLs, really good. Oh, I would say, you know, if you're pulling the weight from here up, this is more of a Romanian deadlift or a stiff leg deadlift. If you have it on your back, it's more of a good morning. So I'm sorry if that was a little bit confusing. This is kind of in the lunge and split squat category. It involves a knee bending and sort of like stepping. Well, it's step-ups. But this is another one of those things where you can bias it towards your glutes and hamstrings, or you can bias it towards your quads. So if you really like this exercise, if you prefer to do this, you can do it for your quadriceps. It's just like, you know, are you stepping up and down, or are you stepping kind of at an angle? I've seen it likened to doing it like an elevator or doing it like an escalator. So if you want to emphasize your quads more, do it like an elevator, straight up and down. If you want to do it for your glutes and hamstrings, do it like an escalator, kind of at an angle. For this specific exercise, you really have to have something stable to step on. Okay, so a bench or a chair, I wouldn't recommend doing it on a couch or a bed because it's going to be like really squishy. Basically, all you're gonna do is put your foot up on the thing and step up. You can see I'm shaky with it. And then when you come down, try to go back up right away. Try not to rest too much at the bottom. Bro, I need this thing, I'm shaky. Like I said, straight up and down is gonna emphasize more of your quad. And going at an angle is going to emphasize more of your glutes. So for this one, we want to kind of go this way. I will also say if the thing that you're stepping on is higher up, that's also going to emphasize the glute more because you're going to have more stretch in your leg. So we're going to try to step this way. And then we come back down and step back. This is definitely going to work your glutes and your hamstrings a lot. And I know it's going to be difficult, but you have to try not to push off with your back foot as much as possible. So this is not my favorite exercise. I think it's really fiddly. I think it's really easy to like use too much of your back leg. So this is not really my preferred leg exercise, but it might be the leg exercise that you like the most. I think that if you have an available staircase, this would be a lot easier. It's going to be really stable and you can step kind of up and forward. You also might have a banister that you can hold on to. So this might be a good option for people that have staircases or have access to a staircase, maybe in like a stairwell or something. But yeah, personally not my favorite, but I thought I would throw it in there. And then the last thing I have, and this is specifically more of a glute exercise, is going to be your hip thrusts or your frog pumps or your glute bridges. So the hip thrust would be your back against something and then something in your lap, and you're thrusting and you're going this way. This would be a hip thrust. So if you have something that's stable, that's not going to move around, this is a good exercise. The good thing about the hip thrust is that you can get some extension in your glutes down here at the bottom. And I would recommend that if you are doing this, make sure you put your butt all the way down to the floor before you come back up. When you come up, you want to have your
torso parallel to the floor and squeeze your glutes at the top. All the way back down. Squeeze at the top. I keep my feet about shoulder width apart. And when I come up, my knee is at a 90-degree angle. So just try to like figure out what works best for you in that sense, like where to put your feet. You want to have your shoulders on the bench, on top of the bench. Keep your heels planted. I don't necessarily always have my foot flat on the floor, but my heels are super stable on the floor. I want to come all the way up, all the way back down, all the way up, all the way back down. And another way that you can make this more difficult for yourself, if you're doing this and you're like, I don't have the weights to make this hard, you can do it 1 foot at a time. So you would keep 1 foot in the air when you come up. It does make it actually a lot more difficult. You really have to stabilize. So you can go like that. It is a lot harder, and it's a lot harder to stabilize yourself. You might have to like put your arms up on the bench like this. Just don't kick your leg out to help. But it's basically the same form. Oh, I forgot to mention, so in the template, in the description, I have glute specific exercises, but I would say this is optional. Like if you really want to work on your on your glutes, or you have some extra time and you want to add them in, like go ahead and do 2 sets of a glute specific exercise. But if the workout's already running long or you're tired, I wouldn't worry about it, because the good mornings or the RDLs and stuff is really also going to emphasize your glutes a lot. If you don't have a stable bench to do it on, you can do glute bridges off the floor, which is basically the same thing, but less range of motion. And you're just going to come up like this, squeezing, and you want to try to get your upper back to be the only part of your upper body that's touching the floor. Just like that. This is another thing that you can also do 1 footy at a time, and it's much more difficult. You probably have to move your foot closer to the middle of line of your body. And if you want to make it more difficult, you can do frog pumps, which is you're putting your feet like this, the flats of your feet together, and then you're doing the glute bridge like that. It also works a little bit of your inner thighs. Also, these are pretty hard. It's a little awkward, but you're squeezing them together. You're also, like I said, getting the inner thigh a little bit. So those are some variations that you can do if you wanted to add in some glute specific exercises at the end of the workout, but it's optional as far as I'm concerned, because you will be working your glutes when you do the hamstring exercise. I think that was my entire spiel about the at-home workout. Truly appreciate everybody being here. This was a good stream. Like I said, the template is down in the description if you want to put together your own full body at-home workout, and you can always come back and rewatch the video to revisit the exercises. And if you ever need clarification in the future, feel free to ask, and I would be more than willing to go over the form again on some of those exercises. Don't forget to be responsible for your own gains. Don't be a dick and control your cock. This is where you can subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you want to watch another video, this is what the algorithm is recommending for you. And if you want to see the entire playlist of YouTube live streams, it's right down here. You can go watch them all. Bye.